how quickly you turn against me. Oh my. I'm being told that you're treating us like relatives, that you intend on starting one time, so you give them a much earlier time. And then Tony Meyer here is telling me you're punishing me for being on time. There's just no pleasing you people. It's only Monday, people. Ay, ay, ay. No, it was a group mistake, that's fine. Why don't we get going? Yes, thank you. We do not do roll call. Yes. We don't want to test the system, is correct. Yeah. Okay, we're going to begin with prayer, and Ben Stratton is going to lead us in prayer. Thank you.
Hallowed be your name. As we gather here this afternoon to do the work you have called us to at Synod, may we hallow your name. Help us to direct all that we think, say, and do, that your name may be magnified, honored, and praised. Your kingdom come. Father, pour your Spirit upon us. Protect us from our desires to build up our own kingdoms. Help us to begin to grasp that your kingdom looks nothing like the kingdoms of this world. May your word and Spirit lead and direct us in such a way that we can catch glimpses of your kingdom coming this afternoon. Your will be done on earth as in heaven. May your will be done in us this day. Give us strength as we constantly wrestle with self. Help us to put aside our own wills, our personal agendas. Help us to follow your will at all costs. Help us as the body of Christ to humble ourselves, to serve and not to be served. Help us to carry out the work we are called to, as willingly and faithfully as your Son. Give us today our daily bread. Continue to sustain us. Continue to care for us as a father cares for his children. Open our eyes to see just how truly blessed we are. Teach us anew to see how your hand provides. Remove our worry, remove our fears, that we may wholeheartedly trust in you alone. Forgive us our debts, as we have also forgiven our debtors. May the Holy Spirit convict us of our sin. May we not be blind to the sin that so easily sticks to us. Forgive us the sinners we are, and do not hold them against us, but rather cleanse us. Remind us that there is only one who can condemn, and that is Christ Jesus. Jesus, who died for us, who was raised to life and is at the right hand of God, interceding for us. Help us to live out of that amazing grace that we have experienced, demonstrating your love and your forgiveness to our neighbors and to one another. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. We often easily stray towards temptation. We can be a weak people. Therefore, we ask you to empower us with the strength of your Holy Spirit. On our own we will fail. We will falter. Make us strong. Pick us up, that we may continue towards victory over temptation and the evil one. Remind us again this day that there is one body and one Spirit, just as we were called to one hope when we were called. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. Friends, please join me in the final words of the Lord's Prayer, saying together, "For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever." Amen.
Thank you, Ben. This afternoon we're going to proceed with the advisory committee reports. As some delegates are walking in, your tardiness is inexcusable. Just a reminder, there's a gentleman with his hand up, yes. The first clerk tells me that it's just in the morning. Yes. Just a reminder to note on the Synod webpage where the queuing is, as well as the reports. Please note that. We're going to proceed this afternoon, and by the way, those of you who walked in a little bit late, it was my mistake. I said be back here at 1 o'clock, and you were probably right because you followed the agenda. It said 1:15, so I was not really commenting about your tardiness because you really weren't technically. Thank you, John. We're going to proceed with the following advisory committee reports: 2A, then 1A, then 7A, then 5B. Okay, so if you're one of those, please note that. 2A, 1A, 7A, 5B, possibly even 6A and 6B, possibly even 3. It just depends. But up first is 2A, and then 1A, you're on deck.
Could we do 2B at the same time?
I think so.
It's been on since that
Yes. Then I don't have any problem with 2B. It's not, just a second, it's not one of those processes for us. It's always not good. Okay, we're gonna wait on 2B.
Okay.
Okay, 2A.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is for Advisory Committee 2A, which dealt with church order and synodical matters. The first item is in response to overtures 3 and 4, which deals with the transfer of the Stephenville, Texas CRC from Classis Central Plains to Classis Rocky Mountain. The recommendation is that Synod accede to overtures 3 and 4 to approve the transfer of the Stephenville, Texas CRC from Classis Central Plains to Classis Rocky Mountain. The grounds are that both classes agree to the transfer. Secondly, the geographical distance makes participation for this congregation in Classis Central Plains more difficult. And third, Church Order Article 39 allows for such transfers, and previous synods have also approved them. So moved, Mr. President.
It has been moved and supported. Any discussion? Anybody in the queue? Doesn't look like it. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Number 2, response to overtures 5 and 6 to permit the transfer of Hope Community CRC from Indianapolis, Indiana, from Classis Ileana to Classis Kalamazoo. The recommendation is that Synod accede to overtures 5 and 6 and permit the transfer of Hope Community CRC, Indianapolis, Indiana, from Classis Ileana to Classis Kalamazoo. Grounds: first, both classes agree to the transfer. Secondly, Church Order Article 39 and its supplement allows for this transfer. So moved, Mr. President.
Any discussion? If no discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Third, a response to overtures 7 and 8, which is to permit the transfer of Peace CRC Minnow, South Dakota from Classis Iacota to Classis Minkota. The recommendation is that Synod accede to overtures 7 and 8 and permit the transfer of the Peace CRC from Minnow, South Dakota from Classis Iacota to Classis Minkota. There are 3 grounds. First, the congregation and Classis Minkota have requested this transfer. Second, Church Order Article 39 and its supplement allows for this transfer. And third, due process has taken place prior to this request. So moved, Mr. President.
Any discussion on this? If none, all in favor say aye. Wait just a moment, please. Someone just got in. All right, please state your name and the classes.
So Anthony Ellenboss from Classis Hamilton. And I noted in the grounds that it said due process has taken place. I'm curious, first off, to ask the committee what that looked like, noting that one of the classes approved that, but the other classes did not approve this transfer, which is not the case for the previous two that we were looking at.
To respond to the church, the congregation made the request to its classes, Classis Iacota. The classes chose to not agree to that request, basically because they had recently made the decision to seat women at their classis meetings, which is what the Minnow Church had difficulties with. And the classis desired that a longer period take place for the processing of how to deal with one another in that kind of a situation. The congregation did not feel that it wanted to take that time, and so went ahead with the request, though classis had not agreed with it.
Then may I follow up with a comment, Mr. Chair? So then I would speak against this motion because I believe that particularly where we as a denomination have articulated a position where on this particular matter, both positions on the participation, the seating of women, the ordination of women have been accepted on biblical grounds, which would suggest that this is a matter of interpretation. I believe that the church and the classis is impoverished when we lower the amount of diversity within any particular classis. And further, it sounds like there is continuing work that the classis was willing to do to continue to facilitate the full participation of this church. And I would like to see the space provided for that process to happen so that this is a leaving in a good way where a true and full process can be carried out.
If I may, I would like to just call attention to a line from the overture that was submitted by the Peace CRC of Minnow. It says, over the 2 years since the decision was made by classis, the elders and council of Peace CRC has struggled to discern what the best response to the change Classis Iacota made should be. So it's been a struggle for them to determine how to do it, and they want to do it honoring their convictions. And although classis desired that they take more or allow more time, the congregation feels in order to fully participate that they need to make this request.
Any other comments or questions for this recommendation? Okay. Could you please state your name and your classes?
I'm Dana Vraken, and I'm from Classis Alberta North. And I would just like to, I am wondering, in a divided world that becomes increasingly divided, and given our conversations about affiliated classes that we talked about in the RCA, I am wondering if this is going to be a way forward in the future that allows for unity rather than division, or if this is something that increases division rather than building unity. And it is just a comment. I'm not necessarily in favor of this either.
Okay, just so I heard you correctly, it sounded like you were asking a question there, but that's just a comment?
Yeah, it's just a comment.
Okay, thank you. Any other?
May I reply?
Please.
Synod has previously granted requests from congregations to move to mostly Classis Min Kota from other regions for the sake, I think, of basically keeping those congregations within the denomination, but allowing them to go to a classis where they feel like they can live more comfortably. And so I think it is an issue of trying to keep unity. So I would suggest that Synod should adopt this.
Anthony Ellenboss would like to speak again.
I'll respect the rules. This will be my final time.
It has been noted.
Thank you. So Anthony Allenboss, Classis Hamilton. In response to that, I would also note that those past decisions of Synod to allow churches to move to Classis Minnesota, in the grounds of some of those decisions, it was specifically noted that future synods should not use this as a precedent for future decisions. And I would also note that I think, again, noting that this is something that we as a CRC, as a denomination, have agreed is a legitimate difference of opinion. I think our differences, I think our, the tensions, the wrestling that we are forced to do when we remain together, forces us into a place of humility, forces us to learn what it means to love one another well. I think that is what the Holy Spirit uses us to sanctify us and the church. And I think removing that level of diversity from our churches on the theological, ethical spectrum, I think that impoverishes our church and lessens the work that God is doing in and through us within our classes. So again, I would speak against this motion.
If I may respond again,
Yes, do.
you will note that in our grounds there is no mention of a precedent having been set that allows that to happen. So that's just part of the discussion. It's not a ground for the decision. I also would like to note that Classis Iacota, we requested a representative to come talk with us about why they had not approved it. And it was noted that the congregation is leaving with the full expression of love for that congregation. It is not a contentious leaving.
Thank you. Dan is up next.
Dana Graff, Classis Iacota. So yeah, we would affirm that as well. That
Could you hold on just a sec? I don't know if you're mic'd.
Test. There.
Yeah.
So I would agree with that final statement. There is no contention, no ill feeling toward Peace CRC if they do get to leave or not our classes. That's not the big deal. I will point out that Classis Iacota, following this decision to allow the seating of women delegates at our classis meetings, came up with a living together in disagreement document. And that was passed with unanimous approval. That was passed a year and a half to 2 years before where we are today. And so, as was mentioned earlier, one of the thoughts that came out of our classis meeting was the question of where do the differences end? If it's just women in office, or are there other issues that we as individual churches get to say, well, you know what, we differ from everyone else on, and so we're going to leave, but it's not an essential issue. And so that's part of the reason why classis voted against this, and why I personally would also vote no on this.
Thank you. Are you good? All right. Is it Rob Tornstra?
Rob Tornstra, Classis Columbia. I hear the concern expressed for unity, and that removing a church from a classis, or a church leaving a classis to go to another church diminishes that voice within its original classis. We did agree some years back as a denomination that we have two positions on this issue. Part of what that means, and part of what we said at that time, is that we need to learn to live with those differences. Sometimes that means allowing a church the freedom to leave to participate in a classes that better fits not just their opinions, but their convictions and their conscience. And so I speak in favor of this motion, because I think that allows Peace Church to do that.
All right. It doesn't look like there's any more speakers in the queue, which means we're ready to vote. Okay, you have the recommendation before you. It's been seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Do we want to vote electronically? I say we vote electronically. Just a minute to set that up. Just a moment, please. We're good. Okay. The recommendation is before you. Vote yes if you're in favor of the recommendation. Vote no if you're opposed.
Voting?
Go to the yes/no vote. Go to voting on the left. You see voting? And then go to the yes/no. Yes if you're in favor of the recommendation, no if you're opposed to the recommendation. I've got a hand up. Dave? You got a tech person right behind you. Anybody else having problems with voting? Okay, if you're in favor of the recommendation, yes. If you're opposed to the recommendation, no. Okay, I'm going to close voting in just a moment. There's a gentleman here with his hand up. All right, I'm going to close voting. Once more, all in favor of it, please vote yes. Opposed, no. And the final tally at this point is 108 yes, 67 no, 1 abstaining. So the motion passes.
Thank you. We have one more item on 2A, item number 4, response to Overture 10 to change the title Classis to Regional Assembly. Recommendations that Synod instruct the Council of Delegates to refer Overture 10 to the Classis Renewal Advisory Team or another appropriate body for analysis, including potential costs involved in a change. Grounds: A, the financial and legal ramifications involved in making this change are unclear. B, more conversation needs to happen about what terminology would communicate clearly and effectively while remaining sensitive to our history. And C, the phrase regional assembly may not be the most appropriate title given current developments such as the proposed definition of a classis and the movement of congregations to classes that are not in their geographical region. So moved.
Any discussion? Any discussion at all? If you're in favor of this recommendation, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And the second item there, that this be Synod's response to Overture 10. So moved.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much for your work. Advisory Committee 1A. Welcome, Amy.
Advisory Committee 1A, reporter Amy Vanderfleet and Chair Gary Duttler, because a previous chair abandoned us. First off, we had Council of Delegates, several sections. The privilege of the floor has already been granted to various staff members and chairs as needed. So moving on to our recommendations. Recommendation 1. That Synod designate Faith Community CRC, Wyoming, Michigan, as the convening church of Synod 2019, meeting on the campus of Calvin College.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 2, that Synod approve the interim appointments made by the COD for synodical deputies and alternate synodical deputies. So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 3, that Synod thank Reverend Henry Cranenberg and Mr. Joel Voss for their service to the Judicial Code Committee. So moved.
Discussion? All in favor of saying thank you, please say aye. Aye. The ingratitude say the same. The motion carries. A word of thanks to them for their fine work. Go ahead, number 4.
Number 4, do you want to treat these A, B, etc. separately or together?
Let's just do them together.
Okay. So, recommendation 4, that Synod address the following with regard to the prioritization and evaluation report found in Appendix C. A, that Synod instruct the Council of Delegates to continue to be attentive to possibilities for combining program functions and infrastructure within and beyond the denomination, and in doing so, to continue working towards optimum ministry programming for our denominational infrastructure. B, that Synod instruct the Council of Delegates to continue pursuing opportunities for rearrangement, particularly as opportunities are presented in upper-level positions and by way of retirements. C, that Synod take note that the COD instructed the Executive Director to find ways to significantly curtail physical plant costs in Grand Rapids, Michigan, by exploring alternatives such as alternative energy sources, renting existing space to other nonprofit organizations, encouraging remote or home office work, significant reductions of building square footage, and the like. The Executive Director will provide a report and recommendations to the COD for eventual presentation to Synod in October 2018. D, that Synod instruct the Council of Delegates and the Executive Director to continue the important work of evaluation and prioritization by working together to implement a robust evaluation strategy, whereby in a 5-year cycle, all agencies and ministries will be continually evaluated through the framework of the 5 callings. Ground. The Council of Delegates has begun work on an emerging evaluation process, inspired in part by the work that resulted in the prioritization and evaluation report that merited Synod's support and input. And finally, E, that Synod receive the prioritization and evaluation report in Appendix C as fulfillment of Synod 2016's instruction concerning prioritization and evaluation, and offer thanks to the Executive Director and the Council of Delegates for their work. So moved.
Discussion. No one has indicated anything, so all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Recommendation 5, that Synod express appreciation for members of the Council of Delegates who have served the denomination with dedication and have contributed toward the governance of the CRCNA. So moved.
Discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Moving on to the Historical Committee. Recommendation 1, that Synod recognize Dr. Robert Schooneyongen, who is completing his 2nd term, and express gratitude for his contributions and service. So moved.
Discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Pass.
Number 2, that Synod instruct all churches and classes to send duplicates, photocopies, faxes, or email attachments of their constitutions and articles of incorporation to the archives. Copies can be sent via surface mail, fax, or email to the archives at the information found. So moved.
Discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Motion passes.
That Synod encourage the following classes, all of which have at least one member congregation more than 10 years old that has not had its minutes duplicated, to contact the archives to have this done. Alberta North, Alberta South Saskatchewan, Atlantic Northeast, BC Northwest, BC Southwest, California South, Central California, Central Plains, Chatham, Chicago South, Columbia, Georgetown, Grand Rapids North, Grand Rapids South, Granville, Greater LA, Hackensack, Hanmi, Heartland, Holland, Hudson, Huron, Iacota, Iliana, Kalamazoo, Coam, Lake Erie, Lake Superior, Minn Kota, Muskegon, North Central Iowa, Northern Illinois, Northern Michigan, Pacific Northwest, Quinte, Red Mesa, Rocky Mountain, Southeast US, Toronto, Wisconsin, and Yellowstone. So moved.
Anyone want to divide the question? All in favor say aye. Aye. What? Sorry. My bad. Someone just hopped into the speaker queue. Tom Baumhoff.
Ellie, we are Tom Baumhoff, classes South, BC Southeast, not Southwest, as it says in that report.
Duly noted.
Thank you, Tom. Once again, it's properly before us. It has been seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Amy, for that.
And finally, the Synod Review Task Force. That Synod received the task force's interim report as evidence that their work continues, and that this task force is on target to complete its work by September 15, 2018, so that its report can be distributed for discussion in advance of Synod 2019. So moved.
Discussion. None. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you for your work. That takes us to 7A. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Council of Delegates, materials, Council of Delegates report, sections 1C, 2CD, Appendix E. Council of Delegates supplement, section 2B, including Appendix C. The privilege of the floor to Reverend Paul R. DeVries, Chair of Council of Delegates, Dr. Stephen Timmermans, Executive Director, and members of the executive staff as needed. Recommendations. That Synod receive as information the condensed financial statements of the agencies and educational institutions, Appendix E. So moved.
Discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 2.
That Synod receive the agencies and institutional unified budget as information and approve a ministry share of $346.48 for calendar year 2019, COD supplement sections 2B1 to 2. The grounds, the $7 ministry share increase for 2019 is the first increase since January 2016. And this recommendation recognizes the declining income trend in ministry shares. This occurs with the realization that there is a Reimagining Ministry Shares initiative mandated by Synod 2016, which is currently in process and exploring the priority of ministry shares and the ability of the church to continue certain ministry activities. The report, which is due this coming year, will present options for the COD to distill and bring to Synod 2019 for discussion and implementation. So moved.
Okay, this motion is before you properly. It's been seconded. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 3.
That Synod adopt the 2018-2019 denominational salary grid for senior positions as proposed. COD supplement section 2D3, page 8. So moved.
Any discussion? This is number 3. If there's no discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries. Okay, number 4.
That Synod adopt the following recommendations with reference to agencies requesting to be placed on the recommended for offerings list. That Synod ratify the list of the above ministry shares, especially designated offerings for agencies and institutions of the Christian Reformed Church and denominationally related agencies, and recommend these to the churches for consideration. That Synod ratify the list of non-denominational agencies previously accredited that have been approved for calendar year 2019. That Synod approve the following organization for inclusion on the accredited agency list. This is a United States organization, short form item, International Theological Educational Ministries, Inc. The grounds, items, mission is to provide biblically based Reformed teaching and training worldwide to indigenous church leaders for ministry. While their purpose is similar to that of Timothy Leadership Training Institute, their geographic focus is Eastern Europe. So moved.
Discussion? There's no discussion, we'll vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
That Synod act on the following with regards to the merger of the Christian Reformed Church in North America Foundation, COD Supplement 2B8, that only U.S. delegates to Synod approve as the members of the CRCNA Michigan Corporation the merger of the CRCNA Foundation, U.S. only, into the CRCNA Michigan Corporation. That all delegates to Synod approve the merger as Synod originally established the foundation, and therefore needs to be the body that makes the decision. The grounds are the foundation is being merged to save the costs of about $25,000 annually related to annual tax filings. So moved.
Discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 6.
That Synod take note of the COD's endorsement of the following action of the pension trustees, COD Supplement Section 2B, that the 2019 per member assessment for the Canadian plan remain at $42.96, and that the Canadian per participant assessment remain at $9,840. Similarly, that the 2019 per member assessment for the U.S. plan remain at $37.20, and the U.S. per participant assessment remain at $7,704. So moved.
Discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
That Synod take note of the Christian Reformed Church Financial Shalom Project, available to assist ministers of the Word and commissioned pastors. The Shalom Project provides training and resources to improve the financial literacy of pastors and congregations. It also provides grants to help pastors meet immediate critical financial needs. Further information and applications are available on the CRCNA website.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Mr. President, I have a question for Mr. Bolt. Can I ask that?
Yes.
Is it available, John? Okay, thank you. That Synod designate time in its schedule to view a video that highlights the Financial Shalom Project, and that we view that now, Mr. President.
Discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We can view it if it's queued up and ready to go. It's not. At some point we will. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Section 2, Christian Reformed Church Loan Fund, Inc., U.S. Materials are Christian Reformed Church Loan Fund, Inc., U.S. report on page 115 to 116. Privilege of the floor to David E. Veen, Director, and any members of the Board of Directors of the Christian Reformed Loan Fund. Recommendation that Synod note with gratitude the work of the Christian Reformed Church Loan Fund and encourage all the U.S. churches to consider using the loan fund for their building projects. So moved.
Support. Discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Pensions and insurance. Materials, pension and insurance report, pages 124 to 129. Privilege of the floor, members of the pension trustees, U.S. Pension Board, and Mr. John Bolt, Director of Finance and Operations. Recommendation that Synod designate up to 100% of a minister's early or normal retirement pension or disability pension for 2019 as housing allowance for United States income tax purposes, but only to the extent that the pension is used to rent or provide a home. So moved.
Discussion. If there's no discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Responses to overtures 16 and 17 to establish a fund to assist immigrant churches affiliating with the Christian Reformed Church. Materials are overtures 16 and 17, pages 333 and 334 in the agenda. Recommendations that Synod instruct the Executive Director to work with the appropriate agencies and ministries to explore the potential processes and necessary resources to facilitate enfolding immigrant churches into this CRCNA. The grounds are the current church planting initiatives need to be coordinated. The long-term costs of such a program requires further research and consideration. So moved.
Discussion? Joel Zeidema.
I propose an addition to what is being offered up, that Synod commit $10,000 to immediate assistance on the grounds. Number one, alignment is needed between church, classis, and Synod to hire attorney assistant and get immigration approval. The church that is looking for this immigrant Burmese pastor and classis Atlantic Northeast have already aligned. We now need Synod support to strengthen a visa request. Secondly, we have identified a Chin-speaking Burmese pastor is willing to pastor the Rochester Chin Church, and there is no one available in the United States. Third, the Burmese immigrant churches offer fertile ground for CRC growth. Most are unaffiliated house churches that only speak their native tongue. We have 4 churches considering entrance into the CRC and 2 that have already entered. Those considering entrance need native tongue speaking pastors of Reformed theology. They are available in Burma, but they're not available here. We need a little bit of funding.
Thank you. We're going to just take a second as officers to caucus on this recommendation as an amendment. Thank you. Joel? The executive committee, it's the judgment of the executive committee that this is a separate motion. So we would entertain then you making a motion to table the current recommendation so that we could get to this as a separate motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Tabling does not get discussion. So all in favor of tabling, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So it's tabled. So now what we have before us was what was once proposed as an amendment is now a motion. Wait. Yes. Yes. It has to be moved. Has someone moved this then? Has it been seconded? It's properly before us. Discussion on this as a motion. Could we have it back on the screen? There it is. All right. Speaker Q. You have to queue up again if you want to speak to this motion. The gentleman in the green shirt, you can speak.
Nick Monsma, Classis Atlantic Northeast. I just want to share very briefly, I will not get into long storytelling, but I'm the pastor of the church in East Palmyra, New York that partnered with the Syracuse Church. The grounds should say Syracuse, not Rochester. And over the last 2 years, we've had a very frustrating experience helping this church out, specifically because they have a pastor who visited them in the summer of 2016 and who needed to return to Burma because of a visa issue, and he has been unable to come and serve as their pastor. They would like to call him. He senses that this is God's call, and he wants to accept that call, and we repeatedly asked different people in the denomination, different departments, different agencies, is there any help? Is there any financial help to help us out securing an attorney who can help this church figure out what the next step is? And we were repeatedly told, no, not in my department, go over there. Oh, we don't have any money, go over there. The denominational infrastructure is supposed to be there to support the ministry of local churches, and we should specifically be very excited about welcoming congregations into our denomination that are immigrant churches like many of ours that desire to do ministry in their own ethnic communities. And this would be an important step for our denomination to say, yes, we are willing to commit to helping these churches do what needs to be done in order to do ministry in this country. I speak in favor of the motion.
We would have never guessed.
Thank you. If you have put your name in the queue, you can head towards the microphone so that we can save a little time. Next up is George Sportel, and then Peter Kornilov.
Yeah, George Sportel from Classis Niagara. I support the idea that Synod supported verbally, but I would think that this is more of a Classis issue and that Classis should be supporting that local congregation in providing the funding. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am opposed to this motion.
Thank you. Peter?
Peter Kornilov, Classis Hackensack. As someone who's actually confronted this over the past 5 years, 6 years of my own ministry, and between the congregations that I've served, probably $20,000 have been spent on immigration fees to the government and to a lawyer. I think if we're going to get into this and we're going to be funding this for every single church, it is a good idea. I think the heart there is good, but will the denomination be able to support that? Because you're going to have a lot of people who are suddenly going to want to come into the denomination because they're getting free immigration support. So I think that there's a slippery precedent here. I also agree with the previous speaker. This is a local and Classis issue. That's where this needs to be solved. That's where it was solved for me. And I also think, in keeping with Synod 2016's instruction, this seems like an unfunded mandate. Where are we getting the $10,000 from? Are we going to get it from Calvin Seminary? Or who are we taking it away from? Sorry, Jewel. Also, what we believe in our environment as Christian Reformed people is that God's call comes with God's provision. And it is the local church that when we call someone, we say, we will provide for you. And here we're saying, no, let the denomination provide for you. I think that we're flipping our entire polity. It seems that way to me. Another issue. My congregation has to prove that they are a bricks and mortar establishment. There is a lot that they have to show to the government. I mean, I've been through this again and again. If you're going to have a group of churches without an office, say a class is trying to support someone, or a congregation that's somewhere far away, or an office that is in Grand Rapids supporting someone in New York or in Virginia, you're going to have a very hard time convincing the government that this is legit. It's going to set off red flags. So I'm not sure that it's really a smart idea. A pastor we lost in Greater Los Angeles had to go back because we tried to do something like that, and it hurt them in the long run. The family, another speaker could talk about that. It really tore apart the family. There was another thing I wanted to say, but I speak against the motion.
All right. Next up is Steve and then Tim.
Mr. Chairman, this is just a question. I'm not sure who it's directed to, following up a bit on what Peter said. I'm not sure how to vote for the motion as it is because there's no specification of the source of those funds. It's just provide $10,000. I guess it seems to me whatever the answer is, if we're going to vote on it, we ought to know where the money's coming from. I'm not sure who that question's directed to.
Steve, you want to speak to that? Sure. No, I'd actually like you to come up with the $10,000. That's a little frightening if you think about it.
So in Synod 2016, this issue was discussed, and this is what is in the Acts of Synod. That Synod required that all new ministry proposals include a ministry share cost implication and or alternative funding plan.
Okay. I mean, I think we understand what that means.
Can't pass.
Yes?
If you have a policy that says you can't pass a motion or institute an initiative without funding, then this couldn't pass unless it had a funding source.
Therefore, I would rule that this motion is out of order then. If we can't state exactly how this thing's going to be funded, I'm afraid, and I apologize for not knowing this, but we're going to have to rule this out of order. I can be challenged. Otherwise, I will rule this motion out of order, and we will go back to the previous motion. Yes, I apologize. It's on the table, so there has to be a motion now to take it off the table.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. How do I get us then to put a line item or something? This is 5 cents per member per year. So what do I do procedurally right now to somehow get us a funding mechanism for this?
Can I recommend that you talk to the officers after this session?
Sure, be happy to. Yeah, okay,
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, but is there a motion to take the motion off the table? All in favor say aye. Aye. All right, it's off the table.
I can talk again.
Yes.
So the motion was to approve that recommendation. Do you want me to,
I was getting in my head, man.
Mr. President, do you want me to reread it, or will we just vote on the motion?
Could you reread it?
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the recommendation was that Synod instruct the Executive Director to work with the appropriate agencies and ministries to explore the potential processes and necessary resources to facilitate enfolding immigrant churches into the CRC&A. The grounds: the current church planting initiatives need to be coordinated. The long-term costs of such a program requires further research and consideration. So moved.
Discussion. If there's no discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
That this be Synod's response to Overtures 16 and 17. So moved.
Any discussion? I've got one hand up.
I'd suggest we table that, Mr. Chairman, because I'll be talking with you, and we're going to try to figure out a funding mechanism to bring that last motion back in. So if we do this, we've closed out all discussion, right? And considered that the answer to those amendments, those overtures. But I don't think it is the answer to those overtures. We've got one more thing to consider that I'll talk with you about at lunch.
There's a motion to table. It has been supported. There's no discussion. All in favor of tabling the second, number 2 here, that is the Synod's response to Overture 16 and 17. All in favor of tabling it, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. I believe that passes. Okay, so that's been tabled.
Okay. Item 5, response to Overture 19, establish an annual compensation survey for commissioned pastors. Materials were Overture 19, pages 351, 352. Recommendation that Synod not accede to Overture 19, and the grounds are: the role of commissioned pastor encompasses many diverse roles and responsibilities that limit the validity of any survey within the CRC&A. The churches can access resources such as 2018 Compensation Handbook for Church Staff by Richard Hammer, which provides detailed compensation analyses for most ministry positions. So moved.
Discussion. Okay, it doesn't look like anyone's in the queue. So all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 6, response to Overture 20, establish a defined contribution pension plan for commissioned pastors. Materials are Overture 20, page 352. Recommendation that we affirm the intent and need to establish defined contribution pension plans for commissioned pastors. It is recommended that Synod not accede to this overture, and the grounds are: centralized administration of multi-employer defined contribution plans require a level of uniformity and coordination not available within our denominational structure. For churches that decide to provide such a plan, the denomination's pension office has information and resources available to local congregations to assist in establishing individual plans. Assistance for meeting the cost of establishing such plans is available from the aforementioned Financial Shalom Project, which we will see a video on later. So moved.
That's the rumor. Has that been seconded? Any discussion? No one in the queue? Okay. Anthony Gretz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Anthony Gretz from Kalamazoo, Michigan. Is it possible to simply mandate that a pension plan is in existence for commissioned pastor? I think my fear is that, especially for a lot of people coming from ethnic minority communities, that there are churches who may take advantage of them and not provide some of the same services and help that's available to those of us who have the privilege of being ordained, seminary trained. I understand that there's a lot of different people in a lot of different places, but I'm wondering, can we at least request that churches do provide that for their commissioned pastors? Because it seems that sometimes they may be taken advantage of or given much lower pay than they deserve. Thank you.
Do you want to respond to that?
Not entirely sure I understand. You're suggesting that we should have such a plan, or at least encourage that there be such a plan, or that churches do that sort of thing?
Yeah, I don't understand why a commissioned pastor isn't guaranteed a pension of some sort.
The difficulty with the overture, which asks for us to establish a plan for the denomination, is that if you provide a central plan, then you have to create structure, rules, and procedures that have been tried before and failed, because the rules under the pension legislature are such that if you don't play the rules exactly by the way the rules are done, then you end up with a plan that gets decommissioned. And so what this conversation happened at the pension trustees meeting a month or two ago, and we learned that having such a plan for the denomination creates structure and obligation that we are just not in a position to have. The recommendation does support the idea that there should be such pensions available for commissioned pastors, but it needs to be done on an individual basis, and any church that has a commissioned pastor can approach John Bolt and the people in his department, and they will help them create the structure. They will also provide the funding from this Shalom project to pay the legal costs of instituting such a plan. Then you also have a plan that will also be portable for that commissioned pastor if he or she moves to do something else. It's portable that way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yes, you've got a question?
Yeah, you are. Yeah, Andy Hansen, Classes California South. I guess I just am coming at this tremendously ignorant and would like to ask a couple clarifying questions. Do we currently have such a plan for ministers of the word? And if so, is that structure not already in place? And cannot we add more employees to that already existing structure?
The plan that we have for ministers of the word is a defined benefit plan, which has existed for many years and has its own set of rules and regulations. So adding a commissioned pastor to that plan, to my knowledge, does not work. And that's not what's being asked for here. What's being asked for here is a defined contribution plan. The difference is that the ministers of the word have a pension that says when you retire, your pension will be X as a percentage of and a multiple of the final earnings of ministers of the word. What this overture asks for is a defined contribution plan, which is very much like having your own RRSP, but they're asking for us to do it denominationally, and that doesn't work.
Gary Duttler is our next speaker.
Mr. President, I think one of the joys of the office of commissioned pastor is that it provides for a lot of diversity, a lot of different ways in which people serve, whether that's as a youth pastor or some other designation. By definition, within that is also the real possibility that it is short-term, while the congregation needs that position. When you talk about pension plan, you tend to speak in terms of something that is longer term. And giving congregations the opportunity to access individual plans tailored to their situation makes to me much more sense than a plan that sort of becomes available for everybody on the same basis. Thank you.
Thank you. John Maidendorf?
John Maiden Classes Huron. It sounds to me, Mr. Chairman, like one of the major concerns underlying these overtures and the conversation that we're having is that churches may potentially be taking advantage of people who are ordained as commissioned pastors and not providing them with proper benefits or providing them with proper salary. I wonder, even with the comments mentioned by the reporter, it sounds like churches have an option of setting up a pension plan, and it sounds like there's no system of accountability for the denomination to tell churches whether they ought to have a pension plan in place or whether they ought to be providing benefits or ought to be providing a certain salary. I wonder whether there's anybody who can give us some information on what kind of protections are currently in place to ensure that there is fairness in the way that churches treat commissioned pastors.
I'm not sure if that really speaks to the motion that's before us. And you can challenge me on that, but maybe you have a short response.
I agree with you. It doesn't really deal with the motion. Yes, the committee felt that it's really important that we treat these people fairly, but we also recognize that most of these positions are contract positions, and in the working out of the contract, hopefully there are some well-intentioned folks within the congregation that will address the fact that we need to treat our employees fairly. Yes, the denomination could put out some encouragement, but it's not a matter of saying we're going to create a plan.
All right, thank you. Next up is Stanley Jim.
I guess I'm a little bit, just thinking about how we are in Classes Red Mesa, where the finances aren't there in the small churches. And more we are moving towards commissioned pastors in our Classes Red Mesa. I think in those areas, we need a defined set of policies or something like that, or even something set apart for our commissioned pastors. Right now, I think that's the attractiveness to become a commissioned pastor is that the church will take care of you. The denomination will take care of you as well. And I think that I speak most likely against the motion here. Thank you.
All right, next up is George Munsma.
I'm from Classes Grand Rapids East. I am in favor of the motion, but I think we should go further and encourage all churches that have commissioned pastors to set up some type of contribution to retirement plans, at the very least contributions to an IRA for them. Even if they're short-term positions, in today's economy, many people have short-term positions, move from one employer to another over the course of their life. If they don't get pension benefits even from those short-term positions, they will be in great difficulty when they retire, as many people will, the way the economy is going. So I would like us to encourage all churches that employ commissioned pastors to provide contributions to their retirement. What I'm not sure is just how to do that in line with the rules of Synod. I don't know if it's possible for us to do that now, or if an overture to next year's Synod would encourage that, to whom should that be addressed? Perhaps the chair or the executive director could give me advice on that.
Are you asking the question who to send an overture to?
No, is there someone in the denominational structure that we could instruct to set up, give such advice, or should Synod do it directly?
Steve?
So I note that Overture 20 recommends a pension plan. It seems to me as I listen to the discussion, we're broader than a pension plan, and I think that reflects the reality that there are other ways to help fund someone's eventual retirement. So I think right now the committee has addressed the question of the overture and is recommending no. This broadening thing could be done in a subsequent year by an overture. It could be done by an amendment. There's multiple ways, but I just think it's important that you remember the overture requested a pension plan. Okay, we broadened this discussion into a defined contribution plan. Just to make this personal, I'm not part of the CRC minister's pension plan. Okay, my employer, it's a really good employer by the way, does, if I make a contribution, they make a contribution to a 401k. So just note that what you're wishing for is a broadening and was not addressed in the overture.
Yes, once again, let's stay focused on the recommendation that's before us. Voting, speaking in favor or against it. It's not really a time to brainstorm possibilities and new ideas. Want to speak directly to the motion that's before us. Next up is George Sportel, and then after that it's Michael Coy. Oh, I'm sorry, Cynthia Fair's up first.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay. I'd actually taken my name out of the queue, but the question that I had was, do we have any kind of information on like how many people this is even impacting? Like, how big of a problem is this? Because we're kind of discussing stuff in the blind, it seemed to me. That was it.
Go ahead.
My understanding is that there are approximately 250 commissioned pastors in the denomination on both sides of the border.
Okay, next up is George. After that, it's Michael.
Yeah, George, Sporto Classes Niagara. I suggest we call the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. You call the question. We have to vote on that immediately. All in favor of calling the question, which means voting, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. We have one person left in the queue, and then we will vote, and that person is Michael Coy.
Michael Coy, Chicago South. George Muntzman's comment made me wonder if we could somehow divide the motion. We have a dependent clause in the motion. I wonder if we could eliminate the dependency and make a statement. We affirm and so forth. Is it too late to do that?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's too late.
I think so. Kathy, if someone has called the question, can we still divide? Michael, you're too late. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, we've called the question, so we're going to vote on this. Would you once again read just the recommendation? Michael, you're too late. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, we've called the question, so we're going to vote on this. Would you once again read just the recommendation, not the grounds?
Okay. That we affirm the intent and the need to establish defined contribution pension plans for commissioned pastors is recommended that Synod not accede to this overture.
Okay. All in favor of this recommendation, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Thank you for your work. You want to do it? Our second clerk has something to report.
According to due process, we are to report the recording of a negative vote. The delegate is Charles Adams. on Report 2A, Item 3, on the grounds affinity classes do not add to the unity of the denomination. The congregation should participate in the process offered by ICOTA. That's information.
Thank you. We continue our work on to Advisory Committee 5B. 5B, Doug McLeod is once again going to report on behalf of that. Just one note, I've heard several people use the word process. I heard the word schedule as well. May I remind everyone that the Synod is meeting in Grand Rapids, Michigan of the United States of America. So settle down. I will give you, yeah, we're a binational, but we're here now. So we'll do the same thing when we're in wherever, Edmonton or wherever. We'll go your way, but see, it's process and schedule. Okay. Doug McLeod has the floor.
Okay, Advisory Committee 5B, eh? This is back to Congregational Services, Committee 5B, dealing with the Council of Delegates report, sections 2B, 6, 9, and 10. And we have 3 recommendations. The first is that Synod take note in the shift in programming from the former service link function to the new connections approach as described in section 2B9 of the Council of Delegates report. So moved.
Any discussion on that? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
The second recommendation regards the ministry support services, which is kind of the invisible grand support for the denominational, all their programs and offices, and it just does a lot of work that makes a lot of people look good. And so Tim Postma and Dean Heatdirks met with us, and we appreciate and ask that Synod take note with thanks that a wide support system of essential and professional services for our denomination and ministries is provided by Ministry Support Services. So moved.
Discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
And here's another easy one. We met with Xiao Chong, the banner editor, and we recommend that Synod recognize with appreciation the quality work of the banner staff in providing rich and spiritually valuable content in the print edition and the online news articles now also available through the banner application. So moved.
Any discussion? Benjamin Boersma.
Speaking as a young adult rep.
Could you remind us of your name and...
Yes.
Yeah.
Benjamin Boersma, young adult representative, North Central Kansas. Speaking as a young adult representative and also as a member of my local church, I'd just like to note that there aren't very many in my church, or at least not in my local peer group, that really do a lot of reading of the banner. And I think one of the things that maybe needs to be done is, can we make it a little more relevant to my generation and maybe try to reach the target audience a little bit better?
Thank you, Ben. Any other speakers? If not, motion before us. All in favor say aye. Aye. I'm sorry, Joel, were you to speak? You're not in the queue.
I did hit the queue, so yeah.
Oh, well, we will still recognize you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Joel Zeidema at Gilliana. There have been some things done to attempt to be more youth-oriented with the banner. May Chong speak to that? He explained some of those things to our committee. It would be good for him to be able to explain that. Chong here.
I don't think that's necessary. That's one of those conversations you can have privately as well. Thank you. Okay, back to the voting. Unless there's another speaker, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Your committee also met with Sarah Roloffs from the Chaplaincy and Care Ministry, and our recommendation is that Synod acclaim with gratitude the varied and vital spiritual work of our chaplains through the Chaplaincy and Care Ministry. So moved.
Discussion. If there is none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Your committee also met with Joyce Borger and the worship ministries. It's been working now for 3 years, and our recommendation is that Synod commend worship ministries for its 3 years of assisting our congregations in our faith formation through our appreciation of the riches of Reformed worship and its varied expressions. So moved.
Discussion. If none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And then regarding Dynamic Youth Ministries, the Cadets, GEMS, and Youth Unlimited, 3 different reports. We've put them together with one recommendation, that Synod declare its appreciation for the spiritually valuable contributions that the Calvinist Cadet Corps, GEMS, and Youth Unlimited make toward the evangelism and faith formation of youth. So moved.
Discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries.
Then,
I'm sorry? Point of order, go ahead. Okay. Please make a comment. Maybe the clerks, if you want to check out this queue problem, find out what the deal is.
I'm Ray Dennis from Classis Georgetown, and I speak in favor of the motion, but I wanted to just give you one example of what has happened at Ridgewood CRC in Georgetown with an immigrant family from Afghanistan. We have attending our GEMS and our cadets children of Muslim immigrants. And I am so grateful for the program.
Thank
yeah, we're thankful at the committee level to hear some of those kinds of stories and testimonies and appreciations. It doesn't all get reiterated on the floor of Synod, but they're out there, yes.
Thank you. Regarding the queue, if you hit the queue, you should get a little note that says you're registered. If you don't get such a note, please try it again. All right?
Yeah. You ready?
Are you good?
Yeah. Yeah, I am. Regarding Overture 15.
Okay, I'm sorry. John to 9 Heist.
John Tonias from Classis Toronto. I too have arthritic fingers, and I was so slow, and I mentioned this a little while ago, but Mr. Chairman, this is not a challenge to you, but I wonder if you could sort of take back the hand of history. A young person asked if the banner could be more relevant to young people. We in our churches are really in a chaos about what to do with our young people. So he asked for that, and someone suggested that Chong, our good editor, would speak to that. Why not a couple of sentences from Chong about our youth and our denomination and the fact that our banner would be a good vehicle to get them in on if we could find the ways to do that. So this is hardly a challenge, and I meant to do it sooner, but as I said, my arthritic fingers. So I wonder if you could make an exception, take back the hand of history to the point where he said, no, it's going to be a private conversation with Chong and individuals. Why not have Chong stand here for a couple of minutes and tell us the vision for young people in our denominational communication?
This is what I'd like to suggest, is that the youth rep would meet with Chung, have a little discussion, and then sometime in the future, maybe Chung could address us and talk a little bit about their conversation. Does that sound good? Okay, let's start there. Let's have him meet with, the youth rep meet with Chung, and then we'll go from there. Good? Good.
I'm still good. I'm good. Our committee is good with that too. Oh, really? Our committee is fine with that. Yeah.
My a former youth director walked in one day, and I said, "This is Keith Stolp." I said, "How are you today?" And he said, "I'm good." I said, "Scripture says there are none that are good." And he said, "Well, then I'm excellent." Sorry to cut you off there.
All right. Overture 15. Overture 15 talks about approving some funding for new curriculum development. And we had a couple of recommendations for that. The overture is found in your agenda on pages 330 and following. And we had two recommendations, the first one of which we are not bringing to the floor because of the ministry share increase that has previously been approved. So our recommendation 1 is no longer needed.
Okay.
So we will proceed to recommendation 2. And this was also constructed with partly the input of Dr. Sid Helema. And the recommendation is that Synod instruct the Council of Delegates to clarify expectations for the denominational funding of Reformed curricula in the future. And the grounds are, A, faith formation is a priority within the denomination, and Dwell, that's the name of the curriculum, is an excellent curriculum worth our continued investment. And B, Faith Formation Ministries identified $150,000 as the estimated cost of implementing the regular refreshing of the curriculum. So that's just a word of sort of guidance or suggestion what the magnitude of it would be. And C, clarifying the mandate of Faith Formation Ministries and the financial commitment of the denomination will demonstrate that the development of Reformed curricula is central to our calling as the Christian Reformed Church in North America. So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and it's been supported. It's properly before us. Any comments or questions about that, please hit the queue. If nobody wants to speak, okay, we'll vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries.
And then finally, Mr. President, that Synod consider this as its response to Overture 15. So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries. Thank you for your work.
And that completes the work of Committee 5.
Appreciate it, Doug. Okay, just want to quick confer with the officers of Synod here. Okay, we're going to show that financial video that was talked about earlier. That's going to be up next. Oops. Okay, you guys are just standing. Okay, good. Okay, please, you can stand. Just so you know, on deck is Advisory Committee 6A, then 6B, and then 3. So if you're part of those, not yet, but soon. Is that video ready to be shown? I'm getting the thumbs up, so why don't we start that then?
When Oasis called me to be the lead pastor, my wife and myself, we knew the financial implication of that because it was a small, growing church. I was hired as the lead pastor, but I have so many things on top of that. So I would lead worship and I would preach. A second week into that, my wife said, "Look, William, this is not a William show." So I knew that I needed to step back and build a team around me. So the dream of growing the church and getting a raise slowly fades away. We needed to hire somebody to lead worship, but at the same time, the church was growing with young families, so we needed to hire somebody to take care of the children ministry. In the beginning, it was okay because it was just myself and my wife, and then we started having kids, so things changed. I was getting really overwhelmed, and we prayed, and I felt like I needed to get another job. That was the time that I was going to give to my family. But now with the financial burden, I would take that same time again and start driving Uber. So I would come back from work 5 o'clock, and then I would go out to drive. By the time I get home, it would be 11, 12 midnight, and my daughter would be sleeping, and I won't be able to spend time with her. So I heard about the financial shalom, and I applied for the program. When I sent in the first application, I was applying for the critical financial assistance. Holly reached out to me and said, looking at your application and looking at your current financial need, they suggested that I apply for the salary supplement. Financial Shalom started giving assistance towards my salary and also encouraged the church to give towards that with the goal of after 2 years, what Financial Shalom was giving, the church will step up and give that full amount. One of the things that Financial Shalom really helped us through is to start having those honest conversations. Because I have to explain to my board, to our elders, that I'm in need. So the process of, even the application process was a partnership. It was the pastor and the elders and the Financial Shalom. It's hard to do ministry with fear. It's not healthy. It's not healthy for me as a pastor. It's not healthy for the congregation. It's not healthy for my family. The Financial Shalom was a miracle because God knew my heart that I wanted to serve. I wanted to love my family, but love my church as well. But fear was in between that. Knowing that right now I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm pursuing my dreams, I'm pursuing my calling, but my family as well, they're being cared for. Man, there are no words to describe that.
For that, just Henry has a quick, from Advisory 7, just a quick note.
Just an encouraging word with regards to this program. John Bolt has been trying to create an awareness of this program. It's a $1.5 million grant that the denomination got for the purposes of providing relief and education. And so we just wanted to be really sure that you all knew about it, that you took it back to your places where you come from, and be in touch with John and his people to access these funds in places where that can really be helpful.
Thank you, Henry. Okay, up next is 6A, then 6B, and then 3. So, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Advisory Committee 6 dealt with global mission and ministry. And we had the great pleasure of meeting with staff from a number of different ministries and agencies. We heard their stories and dialogued with them and prayed with them. And unfortunately, the structure of Synod doesn't allow for us all to have those experiences. So as an advisory committee, we wanted to relay to you how encouraged we were by these meetings, how much we appreciated hearing these stories and about the kingdom work that's going on through these ministries. So with that introduction, I will move ahead to our recommendations. Beginning with the Timothy Leadership Training Institute. This is 6A, and the report that we're referencing is pages 130 to 132 in your agenda. Our recommendation is that Synod commend the Timothy Leadership Training Institute Combined Training Unit in their work of equipping and empowering leaders in the church worldwide, encourage continued financial support, and encourage prayer for direction, focus, and patience as Timothy Leadership Training Institute, Global Coffee Break, and Educational Care are integrated under combined leadership. So moved.
Good. Is there any discussion on this? If there is no discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries.
Moving ahead then to the second recommendation, that Synod encourage congregations to use Timothy Leadership Training Institute materials for leadership development. So moved.
Discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries.
We also met with staff of Back to God Ministries International, and our recommendation concerning their report, pages 133 to 141, and those meetings, is that Synod commend the work of Back to God Ministries International and encourage congregations to use Back to God Ministries International media materials to support their own local ministries and outreach. So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. President, shall I move right along to 6B? Also on our docket was some material from the Council of Delegates. The background to this material is that Synod last year received a number of overtures pertaining to church renewal, congregational renewal, and church growth. And out of that, Synod 2017 made some instructions to the Council of Delegates. And the materials that we looked at were the response to those, well, I guess we'll decide in a moment if they are the response to those overtures from Synod last year. The first that we'll deal with is a list of resources that is Appendix D in the agenda, pages 64 to 75. And our recommendation concerning those materials is that Synod receive the list of resources regarding church renewal, church planting, and evangelism training report in Appendix D as fulfillment of Synod 2017's request for such a list. So moved.
Discussion. If there's no discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries.
On a personal note, I'll add that that is far more than a list of resources. There's some wonderful content and material in there, and I will personally encourage you all to take a look if you haven't had a chance. But that's just me speaking. Thank you, Mr. President, for that privilege.
All right.
Our second recommendation refers to Appendix A of the COD Supplement Report, and it's that Synod take note of the response to the request by Synod 2017 by the way of the Congregational Revitalization and Transformation Initiative Report. So moved.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? If there's no discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries.
Our third recommendation in this area is one pertaining to an offering schedule that appears to have slipped by our officers of Synod earlier. When you recommended that we take offerings for World Renew, you did not make this recommendation as well. So I'll do it now.
Are you indicating some dereliction on behalf of these officers?
I wouldn't use that word, it's a strong one. Oversight, perhaps.
Thank you.
So we recommend that Synod take note of the COD's approval to include the following in the offering schedule for CRC churches for calendar year 2019. 2 offerings for Back to God Ministries International, 4 offerings for Resonate Global Mission, formerly Christian Reformed Home Missions and Christian Reformed World Missions, each on the list for 2 offerings per year. So moved.
Discussion. If there's no discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries.
And finally, Resonate Global Mission. We had the privilege of speaking with a number of Resonate staff members and thoroughly enjoyed our time with them. Our recommendations concerning their report, pages 142 to 149, and those conversations are that Synod congratulate Resonate Global Mission for completing the work of becoming a combined mission agency and encourage its continued reimagination of mission on the local and global level. So moved.
Discussion. If there's no discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries.
And our second recommendation, that Synod encourage congregations to support and pray for Resonate Global Mission with the same faithfulness they supported Christian Reformed Home Missions and Christian Reformed World Missions. I'll note that 2 agencies can inspire twice the giving of 1 agency, though 2 agencies combined into 1 agency are doing the same, if not more, work as those 2 agencies.
Any discussion? No one's in the queue, so all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I think so. That brings us to Advisory 3. Just a moment, please. Go ahead. Our second clerk has another report.
Due process. We have another negative vote that has been recorded. Christopher Lanham on the matter of Advisory Committee Report 7A, Item 4, the response to Overture 16 and 17.
Thank you. Advisory Committee number 3. Kurt, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've had the privilege, we have a wealth of educational institutions in our tradition, and we had the privilege of reviewing a lot of what's going on there. We begin with the Council of Delegates and the name change for Calvin College. You'll note Dordt College is doing the same thing. But the recommendation under point C is this: that Synod, in response to the Calvin College Board of Trustees action of May 3, 2018, 1, endorse the intended change of name from Calvin College to Calvin University, effective no later than September 1, 2020, and 2, permit the COD to act in approving the name change in Article 1 of the Calvin College Articles of Incorporation when the Calvin College Board of Trustees acts to modify its Articles of Incorporation.
Any discussion on this recommendation?
As I understand it, Mr. Chairman, this is a process, and Synod is a part of this process. And mostly it's for overseas recruitment, where the word college is associated with high school. So Calvin is reaching more and more people globally. So that's a piece of why this is happening.
So you're saying it's part of the process?
We're a part of the process.
Got it. Anybody else want to speak to this? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries.
On to Calvin College. Dr. Michael Leroy is on sabbatical, the president, so we're spending some time with Dr. Cheryl Branson, the provost. And this is the recommendation. that Synod ratify the following faculty promotions and reappointments with tenure effective September 1, 2018. And I don't know if I need to read all the names, Mr. Chairman. They're listed for everybody.
We could invite Amy back up here and... No. I think the names are sufficient for us just to read them. It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Thank you.
On to Calvin Seminary. The recommendation is that Synod, with gratitude to God, acknowledge the years of faithful service of Dr. Michael Williams, and note that the new title conferred on him by the Calvin Theological Seminary Board of Trustees, Martin J. Weingarten, Senior Professor in Old Testament Studies Emeritus, effective upon his retirement on July 1st.
Discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries.
The Candidacy Committee. This gets pretty complicated. Lots of discussion on our committee about this. It has to do with where you want things placed. The church order supplement, or the new commission pastor handbook. And so we want to invite Reverend David Call, who's much more familiar with all of this than we are on the committee, if you have any questions. But I'll proceed with the recommendations if you would like, Mr. Chairman.
I've got 2 minutes to 3. We're scheduled to break at 3. I want to suggest that maybe this would be a good time for us to break. So... All right, I don't think we need a motion to take a break. I'm not terribly familiar with these things, but I'm pretty sure about that one. So we're going to break. We'll be back at 1:15. This time I'm really, this time it's 1:15. So, 20 after. I just got you 5 minutes, okay? So, 20 after.